There are all sorts of lessons. I mean, this whole space is so new, and part of it is that we highlight our constantly thinking about what sort of user interactions to enable and how to evolve that. But part of it is that we as a society are still figuring out what the norm should be. So I was talking to this woman and getting coffee a little while ago, and we were sitting there, and her highlight popped up, and she saw that a guy was nearby, and she looked around and said, "I think that's him at that table over there." And I looked at his photo on my phone, and I said, "Yep, I think that's him. I think he's wearing the same jacket." And so she messaged him and said, "Nice yellow sunglasses," because he had these yellow sunglasses on his head. And 4 or 5 minutes later, he took his phone out and sort of stared around, and we waved and laughed and had a great conversation with him. And we're society is figuring out, is it okay to do that? And she said someone else had messaged her and said, "Say hi to your coworker Ken for me. He's a really good friend of mine. I hope it's okay that I said that," because we're all just trying to figure this out. And so the variety of different use cases that we're seeing has just been fascinating. I think the number of encounters, the frequency of encounters has been really interesting. Even when we had a few dozen people on the service, when it was in private alpha, I was seeing people cross paths with me 7 or 8 times a day. And so we pulled in the radius and we added more logic to have a higher bar, and then it was still 2 to 4. The number of connections has been really surprising. Yeah, so I think when we first launched it, it's so funny, it's so painful to launch something before it has all the polish that you want it to have and before you've done everything you want it to do. But we had it in private alpha for a month or 2 in San Francisco, and it was just going really well. And so we said, let's just get this out there and start to get feedback and start to learn. And so when we launched it, we hadn't really done much to optimize the battery life or to do relevance. I think if you tried it now, you'd see it's actually a lot better on both of those fronts. But it's the type of thing that just gets better and better over time, because you have so much context that you can get from the time and the location data that you can use to just make the app better and better and better for people. So relevance and battery life are 2 of those things. So it's an interesting point. I think that one thing that we need to, we often need to communicate in the messaging is that Highlight's not about meeting people. I think most of the time you're not really in the mode where you want to meet people. You're busy, you're doing things, you don't really want people coming up and bothering you. I think our goal is really just to give you this sixth sense and to help surface metadata about the people around you. And there are many things that can happen once you have that extra context. Sometimes you're going to want to talk to them and meet them, and when you do, that's great. But I think our goal ultimately is not to constantly ping you and say you should meet this person. It's really just to have that data be available for you, and over time it becomes less about the push and more about the pull. Anytime 2 phones are near each other, the app has to make these decisions. Are they relevant enough that their profiles should show up in each other's phones? And if so, what fields should we surface? And should we send a notification? And we started with a really simple set of rules around that, but it's become increasingly sophisticated over time. And so you can look at things like, is it daytime or nighttime? And what sort of location is this person in? And have they crossed paths with this person in this place before? And how has their response to seeing people in their feed varied depending on the time of day and the day of the week? And then you can look at the attributes and use things like frequency counts and location data to know which ones might be more interesting than others. And so we think that what we've built right now is significantly more sophisticated than where we started, but we're still a tiny fraction of where we plan to be.